This was one of the most memorable experiences we've ever had. Let me just paint the scene for you. We're standing in the Alta River, which is within the Arctic Circle at the top of Norway. We are about 300 meters away from our cozy wooden cabin, which is surrounded by beautiful woods and forests. The air temperature is hanging around, I think, -1. Super, super cold. The water temperature is just as cold. There are bits and pieces of ice floating past us. I mean, you can see me screaming there. I'm freaking out a little bit. Chanel is laughing. This is not unusual for high-pressure situations. You might see a bit more of that today.
Just a little bit.
Below the surface, we are wearing alpaca wool socks and rubber boots just to cope with the extreme cold. So what are we doing here? Well, the photo was taken by our new friend, Stefan. And he lived with us in our small, cozy cabin. And he is a Swedish photographer and dog musher. And he came up to us the one day. He's like, okay, I want to take a portrait of you guys. And I've got two ideas. The first being is that he wanted to take us out into the woods and find the highest, tallest tree he could find. And he wanted to hang us upside down, by a small, thin rope, and then give us each a balloon to hold. Now, as safe as that sounded, we opted for this one. And we became the first people to take a dip in the Alta River that season. Now, I remember we were standing there for over a minute. It felt like ages. I was losing feeling in my entire body. And I remember screaming at Stefan. I was like, have you got the shot? Have you got the shot? Have you got the damn shot? And he just laughed at me. And he was like, Steve, I took the shot 45 seconds ago. It was just too much fun watching you guys in there. So why do we love this memory so much? Well, it epitomizes the entire year, our entire journey. We were completely out of the comfort zone with new people in a place that was completely opposite in every single way to the lives we lived back home. But let's take a step back.
Yeah, let's go back about a couple years when we were a lot warmer than that previous shot, and we were both living in Johannesburg. Now, you could say we had fairly comfortable lives. We had a beautiful apartment. It was filled with furniture and appliances and all the stuff that we collected over the years. We both had cars, so that made it easy to get around. We both worked in advertising. I was a creative director, Steve was an art director, and we worked for, in our opinion, some of the top agencies in Africa.
Absolutely.
We often worked 10-hour days. We were very committed to our careers, and we had a very set routine. We would go to work, give our energy to that, go home, maybe have dinner, go to gym, that kind of thing, and then we would relax on weekends by shopping or seeing friends. I mean, shopping, mainly me.
You did the more shopping.
Yeah. And then we'd go back to work on Monday. Up until this point, we'd followed society's life plan. We went to school, we went to university, luckily passed both, and then moved on to get jobs in the city. Our next logical steps would have probably be to buy a house, get married, have kids.
Goldfish.
Maybe a goldfish instead, yeah, and work our way up in our agencies. But the problem we had with this was we saw exactly where our lives were headed. It was almost a little too predictable for us, and I think the predictability of it kind of bored us, and I suppose we weren't creatively inspired by this, and not just in our work, but as creative people as well.
Yes, and then along came Design Indaba 2014. Now, we both managed to get sent down by beautiful agencies, and while we were sitting in those exact same seats as you are, on stage walked a man by the name of Stefan Sagmeister, and I'm sure a lot of you guys were in the audience at the time, and you remember him, well, we were all singing at the top of our lungs at the end of it. And essentially what Stefan spoke about was the power of time off. And what that meant for him was he would take his retirement years and he would split it up into his working years. So every 7 years he would take a creative sabbatical, he would close his agency, and he spoke about how important it really is for a creative person. I think he rated it on a scale from 1 to 10 for a creative person as a 12. So
Hey, Stevo.
Hey.
Well, I do think that doing these sabbaticals every 7 years probably has been the best business idea I've ever had. And at the probably really most important point of this would be that it allowed me to keep design as my calling rather than it just being a career or a job. In addition, it really influenced trajectory of the studio enormously. It had every one of the sabbaticals oriented the entire direction of the studio, and I think that's really, really valuable. On top of it, I think it allowed us to do work that not everybody else is doing too, thereby raising our prices a little bit so it was even financially successful. Okay, that's it for me. Have a fantastic time at Design Indaba.
Thank you, Mr. Sagmaster. Now, as you can imagine, after seeing that and listening to that, we were extremely curious about all of it. We loved the idea of traveling to a foreign place for creative enlightenment, as well as having the time and the freedom to pursue personal projects. And, well, we got back to Johannesburg, and we felt super pumped, as you always do when you leave Design Indaba. You feel like you can change the world.
Yeah, very
every single
ambitious.
time. And, well, Stefan's talk was still looming at the back of our heads. We just couldn't stop thinking about it. So we started asking some very important questions, and we got to one, which was, are we living the life we want to live right now? And the answer was no, so we did something about it.
Yeah, at that point, we suddenly had this new desire. We wanted to take a journey around the world for creative enlightenment. And what followed next was a year-long planning exercise. Firstly, we opened a new bank account and put all the savings that we had into this account. We also stopped the shopping and stopped the socializing and started putting all our disposable income into that account. We then sat one day and wrote a wonder list. It was essentially our traveling bucket list. It's all good and well to say you're going to go travel around the world, but what does that actually mean? So we turned it into a tangible list of things we've always wanted to do. We then saw the state of the bank account, and we saw we weren't going to be doing any five-star travel. So we started researching cost-effective ways to travel, and we discovered the service called Workaway. And I don't know if any of you know, Workaway is essentially a database of hosts from all over the world who are willing to give accommodation and food in exchange for 4 to 5 hours of work, of volunteer work. And we looked at ourselves, we said, well, that's kind of cool. I mean, we could do some volunteer work, why not? Yeah. So we started contacting some of the hosts and started securing some jobs. Some of the admin, we had to cancel debit orders, gym memberships, phone contracts, that kind of thing. We told friends and family, which was quite emotional, and we began to sell all our belongings because we couldn't be taking everything with us, right? So we started selling everything, and then I think the hardest part was resigning because, you know, when you work at a career so hard and you work with these amazing people, these people you love, the companies you love, that was really hard. And I remember sitting for breakfast the one day with one of my bosses, and I was telling him what we were going to do, and I remember he just sat there smiling, and it was so bittersweet because he was upset, obviously, that we were leaving, but I think he was just really excited at the prospect of what we were going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having very similar feelings, and I walked out of Joe Public, and those doors closed, and I was like, oh shit, what now? It felt like my entire world had come crashing down. But
yeah, there goes our salary.
There goes everything. And there was no rational reason for us to quit our jobs, other than Stefan Sagmaster. I blame him a bit. Other than this gut feeling, this inkling that this is something that we really had to do and we wanted to do it. And it kept us focused. So I guess once all the dirty work was done, you could say, we started looking forward to our journey. And we wanted a way to document it and share it with all of our friends and family back home. And we didn't just want to email it and post it on Facebook. We would most likely lose friends that way. And, well, so we had several brainstorms over a couple bottles of Chivas Regal, as you do. And the idea of home kept on coming up for us. And our home symbolizes everything that is comfortable, that has routine, and everything that was safe. And it was the life we had led up into that point. And I guess you could say we wanted to get as far away from that as possible. And our mission from that point was to see how far we could travel from Johannesburg as well as how far we could push ourselves out of the comfort zone.
So, on March 2nd, 2015, roughly a year ago today, we departed leaving home with 0 kilometers on the clock. We packed our lives into 4 bags, that was it. We hopped on a plane, and we waved goodbye to home and these lives that we knew. Our first stop at 8,342 kilometers was Austria. And what a new life we had ahead of us. I don't think it hit us yet. The first week, I think we spent sleeping, just recovering and
recovering from life.
And then we realized, we realized what we'd done, and our lives started to feel different, and we almost had to subconsciously unlearn everything we knew up to that point. We felt this new freedom, and there was no more routine. So we didn't have to be anywhere. We didn't have to have lunch at any certain time. We didn't have meetings. We didn't have emails to respond to. So we started to listen to our bodies, and we began to sleep when we were tired. We would eat when we were hungry, and we'd create when we felt inspired. And this definitely slowed the pace down. And, every day started to feel like Sunday, which is awesome, who doesn't love Sunday? But, you're walking around on a Wednesday afternoon, and it's basically us and all the retired people. So that
it was very strange at first, but we got used to it.
So we needed to figure out how to fill up our time. And, when you're blessed with the freedom and the time to do absolutely anything, what do?
Well, we started reading. We read as many books as we could. Chanel started off with more intellectual, grown-up books. I took it easy.
Dr. Seuss,
some Dr. Seuss and stuff like that. But we started meditating every single day, and that became quite a big part of our journey. It helped us stay present, not worry about what's going to happen at the end of it or what we left back behind. It just helped us enjoy where we were at that particular moment. We started working on some small creative projects, some digital illustrations, some doodles, just to get the creative juices flowing. We were a bit rusty. And at that point, we focused on our Instagram project. Now, this was where we would count the exact numbers we had traveled from Johannesburg using Google Maps, and we would write them on a chalkboard, and that chalkboard we took absolutely everywhere with us. And we wanted to find the most beautiful city and landscapes we could. There would always be one of us holding the board in the photo. And as we traveled further, there we go.
There we go.
We added more kilometers. And I think our friends and family back home, they really started to enjoy this project.
Yeah.
And, so did Instagram. And suddenly they featured us on their main account to their 70-odd million users at the time. It came as a big shock to us, something we didn't expect. And now it wasn't just our friends and family looking and following us. It was a global interest in us and our journey, which, I don't know, it was strange. It was awesome at the same time, and it kind of spurred us on to keep on doing what we were doing. And it was crazy to think this was only a few months into our journey.
And so our journey continued when we left Austria, and we headed up north to the Arctic Circle, to a little town called Alta, right at the top of Norway. Now, this was going to be our first workaway experience, so our first taste of volunteer work. And when we originally looked for volunteer work, we searched for work with dogs. We both love dogs. We couldn't have them back in Joburg because we lived in an apartment. So when we found this husky lodge in Alta, we knew this was exactly the kind of work we wanted to do. So we ended up living with over 70 huskies there, which was surreal in itself. We knew them all by name, which was really cool. There were around 60 adult dogs, and the rest were puppies, and the puppies were our responsibility.
It was a stressful job there,
yes.
looking after those puppies.
So we obviously grew very attached to all the dogs, and some of the work we did, we would have to exercise the older dogs and the puppies. Obviously, these were all mushing dogs, so we would have to take them out in the summer and get them fit for the winter. They used to do these little hiking backpack trails.
Yeah.
The dogs would wear little backpacks, so we would have to go and get them fit for that. We would help with the feeding. Obviously, when there's 70 dogs, that's quite a lot of work. It took about 2 hours a day of feeding. And, of course, scooping the poop, right?
What goes in must come out. More than you could ever imagine, though.
So some great work. But living so closely with dogs or with anything, it starts to influence your work. And we came up with this photographic collection we called the Ghost Dog series, where we merged photos of the dogs with some of the portraits of the surrounding landscapes, which was really cool. But it wasn't just the dogs we loved. I mean, those 5 weeks we spent in Alta was just a complete Norwegian culture submersion. It was completely foreign to us. We learned the Arctic way of life. And, we lived with Norwegians and we shared 3 meals with them a day. I mean, some of the food we were eating, some of the stuff we hadn't even heard of, like we were having reindeer burgers and moose stew and king crab, and it was incredible. We also learned a lot of new skills. We spent a lot of time outside, so a lot of woodwork, chopping, stacking wood, peeling bark to make furniture with that wood later on. Steve really got into the woodwork and started carving some spoons, which we used as wedding gifts later in the year, so that was cool. But a lot of time outside. I learned to use man tools for the first time in my life, which was cool. Very hands-on work. Also inside, a lot of hands-on work inside. We were lucky. I was very excited because one of the hosts we stayed with was one of the top chefs in Norway. He ran the ice hotel at the top, and I remember I was with him on the Tuesday helping him out in the kitchen, and he said, well, listen, I hope you're watching closely because on Thursday I'm in Paris and you're taking over the kitchen on your own. And I was like, okay. And I knew we were expecting about 45 guests, but it was amazing. And I think the whole time in Alta was just this series of incredible experiences with amazing people.
Yeah, and one of these experiences was when we decided to spontaneously take a road trip up north one Sunday evening. I think we just decided, let's gather all our camera gear and let's hop in the green van that was waiting outside. I think it was a 1982 Mitsubishi.
Yep.
And we had our 2 new friends in the front, Stefan and Steffi, us in the middle, and a Siberian Husky at the back. And we headed up north to the North Cape. And that is practically the most northern point of Europe.
Yep.
And I guess it's only about 2,500 kilometers away from the North Pole. So from where we're standing here today, it's practically on the other side of the world, right above us. Yep. And I remember looking out the window at about 1 a.m., and the sun wasn't even close to setting. It was this gorgeous light, and we were witnessing the midnight sun. And it was illuminating a very barren landscape. It almost looked like the Arctic tundra, just not a lot of grass, no trees. It didn't feel like anything could live there.
Yeah.
But what there were thousands and thousands of these guys. And to see these guys in the flesh in such big numbers was amazing. We were also lucky enough to spot some white-tailed sea eagles. I think that's what you call it. I'm not sure if any of you know them, but you don't often see them, and to see that in that beautiful light is just incredible. And I remember we looked at each other and we were like, what is it, 4 a.m.?
Yeah.
And we would have been going to work, and friends were getting up, getting ready, going to work, and we were heading up to 71 degrees north with a husky in the back. And it was just a surreal feeling. It didn't feel like we should be there, but we were. And it was a truly unfamiliar place. That's the North Cape, the monument they've got there. It feels like the end of the world. These massive cliffs just fall off into the ocean. And these kind of experiences are exactly why we left in the first place. And this is what we would search for from here on in.
So after traveling about 18,000 kilometers, we reached Sweden. And this was going to be another workaway experience. No dogs this time. I mean, there was a dog.
There's always a dog.
There's always a dog, but we weren't in charge of him. We were going to help with the tourists. Now, what that actually meant was we were going to be the cleaning staff. So we would work at a campsite, and we would be scrubbing toilets and cleaning bathrooms and doing the laundry. So, this is where we stayed. It was, we stayed with a Dutch family, basically in the middle of nowhere. I think the closest town, or big town, was about 50 kilometers away. And it was a very different summer to the one we knew. I think average temperature was about 4 degrees. It rained a lot. And, so we're cleaning staff. We're in the middle of nowhere, and it's freezing. One of the toughest months, I think, we've had on our journey.
And it was really tough because we wanted to do something, too, that we'd always wanted to do. And it was part of our wonder list, and that was to go unplugged, off the internet, off the grid for the entire month. So no email, no Google, no Skype, no contacting friends, family, nothing. Just us and the Dutch family. And it was complete isolation for an entire month. But it really did become one of the most educational months we've ever had. I think we learned a lot about ourselves. It almost felt like a cleansing of the system. Yeah. And we soon found out that our back and neck pain disappeared because we weren't playing on our devices. We started talking more, actual physical conversations between two people. I think our relationship grew that much closer.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And, well, we had massive ups and massive downs. It was an emotional month. I don't think I've ever cried as much as I had that month. Man tears, but... Now that we had even more time on our hands because we weren't playing on our devices, what do we do? And so we looked outside, and there was this incredible wilderness just waiting to be explored. So we got back to nature. We started hiking. We started cycling. We went on 3 a.m. sunrise drives. That's where we spotted these cheeky little fox cubs.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw reindeer, moose, you name it. We even spotted a wolf. And no one believed us at the campsite that we saw this wolf. We don't have a photo because the wolf hadn't been spotted there for 30 years or more in the area. Yeah. But we did see it. You're going to have to believe us. We also started pursuing our creative projects. We photographed, illustrated, and filmed all of our beautiful surroundings. And I think that became our way, this documentation became our way of expressing ourselves. These illustrations were... inspired by our morning sunrise drives.
Yeah, there's the wolf.
Oh,
so we did see him.
Yeah, okay. And these evolved into other art pieces.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is that looking for inspiration, it didn't mean going on Behance, it didn't mean going on Google and Vimeo and surfing the net. It meant going outside and exploring. It meant speaking to people, even if you didn't understand their language.
No, we didn't. We still cannot speak a word of Swedish after that entire month.
We must try. But it meant just exploring. And we found this amazing museum, which just filled with artifacts, and it really did inspire us in some ways. And we also had the time to brainstorm anything we ever wanted now. So in our own little way, we wanted to see if we could change the world again. And we wrote very big questions on very small pieces of paper, mainly because we didn't have much paper. But we tried to answer them, just random questions, and we spent a few hours a day, each day, just throwing out ideas, and we came up with some amazing stuff.
Yeah. But our month Unplugged, however difficult, I think it was an extreme that trained us to ignore the unimportant. We continued with our meditation sessions. We learned some new visualization techniques, which was amazing. And we did a lot of internal questioning. I mean, I think there were some passions that we rekindled from our childhood, which was great. And we realized as well that when you're living life and actually living it, experiencing everything the world and nature has to offer, there's no time for boredom. There's no time for depression or anxiety or any of these feelings that might come and go. We live in such a beautiful world that exploring it and really discovering undiscovered places should be our purpose.
So, we had been on the road for about 6 months now, and we had been sailing in Greece on a very small boat. We had worked in a dog training facility in rural Italy for an entire month, which was unbelievable. And at that point, Chanel decided to write a very honest blog post about what it was like giving up what we had back home and traveling the world to follow your dream. And, well, the media got hold of it, and it kind of broke the internet for a while. Overnight, we became known as the traveling toilet scrubbers, who were broke and scrubbing toilets just to get by. And now, you can imagine waking up to this was both distressing as well as hilarious at the same time. But we received a lot of support from the people out there in our community, and I think they could obviously sense that we had given up a lot to chase our dream.
Yeah, I guess what didn't come across in the blog posts, or in the media's posts at least, was that we were very happy doing the dirty jobs. We weren't doing them to make money to survive. I mean, we had a budget, a very strict budget, but we stuck to it throughout the trip. And, we were doing these jobs for free. We were doing them to get uncomfortable, and that's exactly what we wanted out of the journey. So it was awesome. We also, as Steve mentioned, we got some cool suggestions from our community. As the story spread, we had people from all over the world now, part of our journey, and they saw our wonder list and they started suggesting things for us to do. And some really cool suggestions came through, like roasting marshmallows over a live volcano, trying to hug as many people as possible at Burning Man, tobogganing down the Great Wall of China. I mean, we didn't even know what tobogganing was at this point.
I still don't know, but I want to do it.
So some great suggestions, and I think our journey to collect experiences really evolved at this stage, and the adventure became a lot more exciting because it went global.
Yes, so we carried on moving. we kept it energetic, and after traveling over 61,000 kilometers, we headed east, and we went to Australia. We spent 5 weeks in beautiful Australia. But as soon as we arrived, there was a sense of familiar that came back. I mean, Sydney and Perth both have very similar climates, cultures to us back home, and we were staying with family. I was there for my brother's wedding. It almost felt like a break within our journey, and we kind of relaxed a little bit, and it felt like a holiday. And, well, I mean, it felt like home, except for their strange accents. But it freaked us out a little bit instead of comforting us. And it was a very strange feeling, but we realized that we wanted to focus on our travels. We had to keep on moving. We didn't want to keep still. And we realized that in order to stay inspired and to create, we just had to keep on moving.
So we did. We carried on moving, and by getting further and getting more uncomfortable, we were simply feeding this creative spark that we had. And the rest of our journey remained very energetic as we added more kilometers to the journey. So we traveled to Thailand and Turkey. We ate fried crickets in Bangkok, which was great. And we crossed over from Europe to Asia the one night.
You finished it, thank goodness.
Whilst in Istanbul, we flew in a Red Bull helicopter through a rainbow and a storm. It was crazy. And then we rapped Kanye West at a karaoke bar in Florence.
We rapped it badly, but we rapped it.
We snorkeled with stingrays off Pacific Islands and sang along with an Oompa band at Oktoberfest. We crashed a big fat Greek wedding, we drove on the German Autobahn, and we crossed the highest suspension footbridge in Europe in minus 20-degree weather. We even ended up hiking through waist-deep snow in the Alps, experiencing proper snow for the first time in our lives.
And I think people could clearly see that we were two South Africans that had never seen snow before.
So sadly, we only had half an hour to share the whole journey, so here's a quick summary of our year on the road. So we ended up visiting 4 continents, and we saw 15 countries and stopped past 49 cities. We traveled in 97 trains, 28 cars, 24 planes, 16 buses, 12 bicycles, 6 ferries, 4 trams, 3 cable cars, 2 tuk-tuks, 2 funiculars, 1 helicopter, 1 powerboat, 1 vintage chairlift, and 1 sailing boat. We slept in 43 beds, in 17 hotels, 9 family and friend homes, 8 Airbnb apartments, 4 volunteer houses, 2 hostels, 2 tents, and 1 sailing boat.
We shoveled half a ton of rock. We spread over 250 kilograms of cow dung. We scrubbed 135 dirty, stinky toilets. We endured 90 sessions of dog poop scooping. We laid down 60 meters of pathway, made 57 beds. We built 1 awesome jungle gym, and we cleaned 1 chicken coop. We became friends with 23 Australians, 20 Austrians, 13 Germans, 12 Norwegians, 12 Americans, 8 Canadians, 8 New Zealanders, 4 Dutch, 4 South Africans, 4 Greeks, 3 Swedes, 2 Spaniards, 2 Italians, and 1 very strange Slovakian.
And now, after traveling 105,335 kilometers, we've come full circle to end up back in South Africa and back at Design Indaba. Yay! When we started this creative sabbatical, we obviously did it for creative enlightenment, and what we've gotten in return is clarity and a whole new perspective. We've realized how big the world actually is and how many forms of inspiration are available for the taking. We no longer want to collect things. There's no need for them. We've got 4 bags. That's all we need. And life-changing experiences are exactly what we're after.
So soak everything up, especially this week, and put yourself out there. And be prepared to act on your ideas. I think it was the people we met, the food we tasted, and the wide open spaces that we saw that really did have the biggest effect on us and our work. So have the courage to listen to your gut. This is us doing just that. Yeah. And hopefully our story has inspired you to chase your own Arctic River experience. Thank you.
Thank you.